The massive ship called New Sol Academy floated through space like a small city made of metal and glass. Inside its long corridors, young beings from 12 different worlds walked together, talked together, and sometimes fought together. The ship was bigger than most cities back on Earth. It had training rooms, classrooms, sleeping quarters, food halls, and everything needed to teach the future leaders of the galaxy. Hana walked quietly through the main corridor, keeping her head down as she always did. She was 17 years old with short black hair and dark eyes that seemed to notice everything while trying to stay invisible. Her small frame made her look even younger than she was. She carried her engineering books close to her chest and moved quickly toward her next class. As she walked, she passed groups of alien cadets. The tall blue Astari spoke in their musical language, their forearms moving gracefully as they communicated. The rock-like granite people stood in silent groups, their stone faces showing no emotion. The furry Kalani chatted excitedly in their squeaky voices, their tails swishing back and forth. But it was the Vorthak that made Hana nervous. These reptilian warriors stood over 7 feet tall, with green scaly skin and yellow eyes that seemed to burn with constant anger. They looked at human cadets with open disgust, as if humans were insects that had somehow learned to walk upright. When Hana passed near them, she could hear their low hissing voices speaking about the weak mammals and primitive earth creatures. Hana hurried past them and entered the engineering section of the ship. This was her safe place. Here, among the humming machines and glowing computer screens, she felt more comfortable. She understood how things worked. She knew which buttons to press and which wires carried power. Machines made sense to her in ways that people often did not. "Good morning, Hana," said her instructor, Professor Kim. He was one of the few human teachers on the ship. Most of the professors were from older, more established species in the Galactic Federation. "Good morning, Professor," Hana replied quietly, taking her usual seat in the back of the classroom. The lesson was about power distribution systems on large spacecraft. Hana listened carefully as Professor Kim explained how energy flowed through the massive ship they lived on. She took detailed notes and asked no questions, even though she understood the material better than most of her classmates. After class, Hana made her way to the observation deck. This was another place where she felt safe. The huge windows showed the endless black of space, filled with distant stars that looked like tiny diamonds on dark cloth. She often came here to think and to watch the training flights. Today, she was not alone. Several other cadets stood at the windows, watching something special happening outside. Hana moved closer and saw what held their attention. The Imperial Dragon Squadron was training. 5 sleek fighter ships moved through space like deadly dancers. They twisted and turned, dove and climbed, always staying perfectly together. The Kuai ships were painted black with golden dragons on their sides, the symbol of human space forces. Each fighter was small but incredibly fast, built for quick strikes and impossible maneuvers. "Look at them go," whispered another human cadet standing nearby. "They make it look so easy." Hana nodded but said nothing. She had watched the Dragon Squadron many times before. She knew their names, their fighting styles, and their incredible record. Commander Park Jinwoo led the squadron with calm skill that made other species respect him. Kim Minho was the youngest pilot, but could fly through asteroid fields like he was born in space. Choi Daeho was the heavy weapons expert who never missed his target. Lee Salmon was the only female pilot and could outmaneuver anyone in the galaxy. The 5th pilot, Nam Hyuk, was the newest member but already showed great promise. These 5 humans had proven that Earth people could fight alongside anyone in the galaxy. They had won competitions against alien pilots who had been flying since before humans discovered fire. They made the Vorthak angry because they could not be dismissed as weak. "I wish I could fly like that," the other cadet said. Hana wished the same thing, but she knew it was impossible. She was too shy, too quiet, too afraid of standing out. The Dragon Squadron pilots were everything she was not. They were confident, bold, and unafraid to show the galaxy what humans could do. As she watched, the 5 fighters suddenly broke formation. They spun away from each other, then came back together in a complex pattern that looked like a flower blooming in space. Other alien cadets at the observation windows made sounds of appreciation. Even species that usually dismissed humans had to admit the Dragon Squadron was impressive. "Attention all cadets," came a voice over the ship's communication system. "Evening. Meal service begins in 30 minutes. All cadets report to your designated dining areas." Hana sighed and gathered her books. Mealtime was always difficult. The dining hall was crowded and loud, full of different species eating different foods and speaking different languages. She usually found a quiet corner where she could eat quickly and leave. As she walked toward the dining hall, she passed the squadron ready room. Through the open door, she could see Commander Park and his pilots reviewing their training flight. They sat around a table, pointing at holographic displays and discussing their performance. They looked tired but happy, like people who loved what they did. Commander Park looked up and saw her walking past. He nodded politely as he always did when he saw human cadets in the corridors. Hana nodded back quickly and kept walking, her face turning red with embarrassment. She found her usual table in a quiet corner of the dining hall. The food was decent, designed to meet the nutritional needs of all 12 species aboard the ship. Hana ate slowly, watching the other cadets interact with their friends and classmates. At the Vorthak table, the reptilian warriors ate large portions of raw meat while discussing combat techniques. Their voices carried across the room, full of aggressive confidence. Several of them looked toward the human tables with expressions of disdain. At the Asthari table, the blue four-armed beings shared colorful fruits, while creating complex musical harmonies with their voices. They seemed to turn everything into art, even their conversations. The Kalani bounced excitedly in their chairs, their furry faces animated as they told stories and shared jokes. Their laughter sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, and at the human tables, Earth cadets talked quietly about their classes, their homes, and their hopes for the future. They seemed smaller and quieter than the other species, but Hana knew they were working twice as hard to prove themselves worthy of being here. After finishing her meal, Hana returned to her small dormitory room. Her roommate, Yoon Ji-won, was already there studying for a diplomacy exam. "How was your day?" Ji-won asked, looking up from her books. "Same as always," Hana replied, settling at her desk to review her engineering notes. "Did you see the Dragon Squadron training today?" "Yes, they were amazing. I heard they might get assigned to a real mission soon. Something important?" Hana looked up from her books. "What kind of mission?" "Nobody knows for sure. But there are rumors about tensions on the outer colonies. Some species think humans are expanding too fast." This worried Hana. Humans had only been part of the Galactic Federation for 5 years. Many alien species still saw them as newcomers who had not earned their place among the stars. If there was conflict coming, humans would have to prove themselves once again. "I hope the rumors are wrong," Hana said quietly. "Me too. But if they are not, I am glad we have pilots like the Dragon Squadron to protect us." Hana nodded and returned to her studies. Outside her small window, the stars continued their ancient dance across the darkness. Somewhere among those distant lights were worlds full of beings who might see humans as friends, enemies, or something in between. She did not know that tomorrow would bring events that would test everything she believed about herself and her species. She did not know that the quiet life she had built aboard the Academy ship was about to change forever. For now, she was just a shy girl trying to learn about engineering while staying out of everyone's way. But the galaxy had other plans for Hana. The next morning started like any other day for Hana. She woke up early, before her roommate Ji-won, and quietly prepared for her classes. The ship's artificial day and night cycle made it feel almost normal, like living in a city that never saw real sunlight. After her morning engineering class, Hana needed to visit the maintenance section on Deck 7. Professor Kim had asked her to check some power readings for a project she was working on. The maintenance areas were usually empty during class hours, which was perfect for someone who preferred to avoid crowds. Hana walked through the quieter corridors of the ship, her footsteps echoing softly on the metal floors. The maintenance section was located far from the main areas where most cadets spent their time. Here the walls were lined with pipes and cables that carried power and water throughout the massive ship. She found the access panel she needed and began taking readings with her small handheld device. The numbers on the screen told her exactly how much energy was flowing through this part of the ship. Everything looked normal, which was good news for her project. As she worked, Hana heard footsteps approaching. She looked up and felt her heart sink. 3 Vorthak cadets were walking toward her, their yellow eyes fixed on her small figure. She recognized the leader immediately. His name was Thekvor, and he was known throughout the academy for his aggressive attitude toward human cadets. Thekvor stood almost 8 feet tall with dark green scales that looked like armor plating. His claws clicked against the metal floor as he walked. The 2 Vorthak behind him were slightly smaller but no less intimidating. Their reptilian faces showed the same expression of disgust that Hana had seen many times before. "Look what we have here," Thekvor said in his deep, hissing voice. "A little human all alone." Hana tried to ignore them and continued her work, but her hands were shaking now. The device in her hands beeped as she tried to take another reading. "We are talking to you, mammal," said one of the other Vorthak. "It is rude not to answer when your betters speak." "I am just doing my schoolwork," Hana said quietly, not looking up from her device. Thekvor moved closer, his large body blocking the light from the corridor. "Your schoolwork. As if humans belong in an academy for real warriors." "The Galactic Federation accepted humans as members," Hana said, still trying to focus on her readings. "We have the right to be here." "Rights," Thekvor laughed, a sound like stones grinding together. "You think you have rights because some old politician signed papers. But we know the truth. Humans are weak. Your species has been in space for less than 100 years. My people have been warriors for 10,000. The other 2 Vorthak moved to block the exits from this section of corridor. Hana realized she was trapped. Her heart began beating faster, and she felt the familiar urge to run and hide. But there was nowhere to go. "Please just let me finish my work," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Work!" Thekvor spat. "You want to know what real work is? Real work is fighting. Real work is conquest. Real work is proving that your species deserves to exist among the stars." He reached out with one clawed hand and knocked the device from Hana's grip. It clattered across the floor, its screen cracking against the metal. "That was Academy property," Hana said, anger beginning to mix with her fear. "So report us," Thekvor said. "Tell your human teachers that the big scary lizards were mean to you. See if anyone cares about the feelings of a primitive mammal." Meanwhile, several decks above, the Imperial Dragon Squadron was conducting their morning training session. Commander Park Jinwoo sat in his fighter's cockpit, running through combat simulations with his team. The 5 ships moved through a series of attack patterns, their computers tracking imaginary enemies. "Dragon 2, adjust your approach angle," Park said into his communication system. "You are coming in too steep." "Copy that, Dragon Leader," replied Kim Minho, pulling his fighter into a more gradual dive. The squadron had been training harder than usual lately. There were rumors of possible conflicts on the frontier worlds, places where human colonies were expanding into space, that other species claimed as their own. If fighting broke out, the Dragon Squadron would be among the first humans called to respond. "Dragon Leader, I am reading some unusual energy patterns from Deck 7, reported Lee Soman from Dragon 4. Park checked his instruments. The ship's power systems were monitored constantly during training flights to make sure their high-energy maneuvers did not interfere with other ship functions. "What kind of patterns?" Park asked. "Looks like someone is accessing maintenance systems in Section 7 Gamma. Power fluctuations suggest possible equipment malfunction." Park frowned. Maintenance work was usually scheduled during off hours to avoid interference with training. "Dragon Squadron, continue standard patterns. I will check with ship operations about the maintenance activity." Back on Deck 7, Hana found herself being pushed toward a side corridor by the 3 Vorthak cadets. This area led to a maintenance bathroom facility that was rarely used except by repair crews. "Let us have a proper conversation," Thekvor said, his voice full of menace. "Somewhere more private." "I do not want to talk," Hana said, but her voice came out as barely a whisper. Too bad. You see, little human, there is something you need to understand about your place on this ship. Your species thinks it can just walk in here and demand equal treatment, but equality must be earned through strength. They pushed her into the bathroom facility. It was a small space with basic fixtures, designed for maintenance workers. The walls were lined with pipes and electrical panels. There was only one way in or out. Your precious dragon squadron may impress some people, said the second Vorthak, but they are just 5 pilots, 5 humans among thousands of superior beings. They prove that humans can fight, Hana said, finding a small bit of courage. They prove nothing, Thekvor snarled. Any species can learn to push buttons and fly in straight lines. Real warriors fight with claws and teeth. Real warriors do not need machines to make them strong. He moved closer to Hana, towering over her small frame. So here is what will happen, little mammal. You will admit that humans are inferior. You will say that your species does not belong among real warriors, and maybe we will let you crawl back to your engineering books. Hana looked up at the 3 reptilian faces staring down at her. For most of her life, she had avoided confrontation by staying quiet and staying hidden. She had never stood up to bullies because she believed she was not strong enough to fight them. But as she stood in that small bathroom, surrounded by beings who wanted to humiliate her and her entire species, something changed inside her mind. She thought about the Dragon Squadron pilots who faced impossible odds every day. She thought about all the human cadets who worked twice as hard as everyone else just to prove they belonged. She thought about her ancestors on Earth who had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and every other challenge the universe could throw at them. No, she said quietly. What did you say? Thekvor demanded. Hana raised her head and looked directly into his yellow eyes. I said no. I will not say humans are inferior. I will not apologize for being here. And I will not let you make me feel ashamed of what I am. The 3 Vorthak looked surprised. They had expected the shy human girl to break down and beg for mercy. They had not expected defiance. Wrong answer, Thekvor hissed, reaching toward her with his clawed hands. But Hana was already moving. Her engineering training had taught her to think quickly and solve problems under pressure. As Thekvor reached for her, she stepped sideways and grabbed a maintenance panel on the wall. The bathroom suddenly filled with the sound of rushing water as Hana activated an emergency flush system. High-pressure water shot from several directions at once, soaking all 3 Vorthak and filling the small space with chaos. Above them, Commander Park was still trying to understand the power fluctuations his pilot had detected. The readings were getting stronger, suggesting that someone was drawing significant power from the ship's maintenance systems. Dragon Leader, came Soman's voice again. Those energy patterns are definitely not normal maintenance work. Someone is using a lot of power very quickly. Park made a decision. Dragon Squadron returned to hangar. We need to investigate this situation personally. In the bathroom, Hana had bought herself a few seconds, but she was still trapped with 3 angry Vorthak who were now wet and furious. Water dripped from their scales as they struggled to see through the spray. You will pay for that, human, Thekvor roared. But Hana was not done yet. Her mind was working like the engineering problems she loved to solve. Every system had weaknesses. Every machine could be turned to unexpected purposes. And this bathroom was full of systems she understood better than her attackers did. She reached for another panel, her wet fingers finding the controls she needed. It was time to show these bullies that being underestimated could be a very dangerous mistake. The second control panel Hana activated controlled the bathroom's ventilation system. Suddenly, powerful fans began pulling air through the small space, creating winds strong enough to make the 3 Vorthak struggle to keep their footing on the wet floor. What is this human doing? Shouted the second Vorthak over the noise of rushing air and water. Hana did not answer. She was thinking like an engineer now, seeing the bathroom not as a trap, but as a complex machine with many different parts she could control. Her fingers found a third panel, this one controlling the artificial gravity in this section of the ship. She reduced the gravity to half normal strength. The three Vorthak, who were used to fighting in full gravity, suddenly found themselves stumbling and sliding on the wet floor as their bodies became lighter. Impossible, Thekvor hissed, trying to grab onto a pipe for support. Humans do not have the knowledge to control ship systems. You never bothered to learn what we study, Hana said, her voice stronger now. You just assumed we were stupid. She activated the emergency lighting system, and the bathroom filled with flashing red lights that made it hard for the Vorthak to see clearly. Their yellow eyes, designed for steady light, could not adjust quickly to the strobing emergency signals. In the hangar bay above, the Dragon Squadron was landing their fighters. Commander Park climbed out of his cockpit and immediately went to the communication station. Operations, this is Commander Park. We detected unusual power draws from Deck 7, Section Gamma. What maintenance work is authorized for that area? Stand by, Commander, came the reply. A few seconds later, no maintenance work is scheduled for that section today. All repair crews are working on Deck 12. Park felt a cold worry in his stomach. Someone was using ship systems in an unauthorized way. That could mean sabotage, equipment failure, or something else dangerous. Minho, Solman, you are with me, he ordered. Daeho and Hyok, stay here and monitor ship communications. If we do not report back in 10 minutes, alert security. The three pilots left the hangar and began moving quickly toward Deck 7. They carried no weapons, but their training had taught them to handle many different kinds of emergencies. Back in the IDI bathroom, Hana had managed to trap one of the Vorthak cadets. She had activated a maintenance robot that was normally used to clean pipes, and now it was spraying cleaning fluid at the alien's face while he tried to bat it away with his claws. The second Vorthak had slipped on the wet floor and was struggling to stand up in the reduced gravity. Every time he tried to get to his feet, the combination of water, low gravity, and swirling air knocked him down again. But Thekvor was still dangerous. He was the largest and strongest of the three, and he had managed to brace himself against the wall. His yellow eyes burned with rage as he looked at the small human girl who was causing all this chaos. Clever tricks, he snarled. But they will not save you forever. When this ends, I will make sure you regret embarrassing Vorthak warriors. Maybe, Hana said, checking another control panel. But first you have to catch me. She activated the waste disposal system. Suddenly, powerful suction began pulling water and debris toward the floor drains. The noise was incredible, and the force was strong enough to make all three Vorthak lose their balance again. Thekvor tried to move toward Hana, but she was ready for him. She grabbed a flexible maintenance hose and pointed it at his face. High pressure, cleaning solution shot out, hitting him directly in the eyes and making him roar with pain and anger. Security cameras, Hana said to herself, looking up at a small device in the corner of the ceiling. The whole ship can probably see this. She was right. The bathroom's security system was automatically recording everything that happened, and the unusual power usage had triggered alerts throughout the ship's computer network. Other cadets in different parts of the academy were beginning to notice the emergency signals coming from Deck 7. In the human dormitory section, Yoon Ji-won was studying when her communication device began beeping with an emergency alert. Security incident on Deck 7, she read aloud. All cadets remain in designated areas. But something about the location worried her. Deck 7 was where Hana had gone to do her project work. Ji-won grabbed her device and tried to contact her roommate. Hana, are you okay? She said into the communicator. No answer came back. Ji-won looked around the dormitory common room. Several other human cadets were also receiving the emergency alert. They looked worried and confused. Does anyone know what is happening on Deck 7? Asked one of the cadets. Whatever it is, it involves a lot of power usage, said another, checking his engineering tablet. Someone is running multiple systems at maximum capacity. Ji-won made a decision. I think Hana might be in trouble. She went to Deck 7 this morning for a class project. The alert says to stay in our areas, one cadet pointed out. The alert is for general cadets. But if one of our own is in danger, we should help. 3 other human engineering students agreed to come with her. They gathered their tablets and technical equipment, then left the dormitory and headed toward Deck 7. Meanwhile, Commander Park and his two pilots had reached the maintenance section. The sound of water, air, and mechanical systems was clearly audible from the corridor. Someone is definitely using the bathroom facilities for something other than their intended purpose, observed Kim Minho. The question is whether they are victim or attacker, Park replied. Lee Soman checked her portable scanner. I am reading 4 life forms in that bathroom. 1 human, 3 Vorthak. Elevated heart rates suggest extreme stress or physical conflict. A human cadet alone with 3 Vorthak, Park said grimly. That is not a fair fight. Should we intervene? Immediately, Minho asked. Park considered this carefully. As military officers, their first instinct was to end any conflict quickly and safely, but as humans in the Galactic Federation, they had to think about larger implications. We monitor, for now, he decided. If the human is in immediate life-threatening danger, we act, but if they are holding their own, we let them finish this themselves. Sir? Soman asked. Because, Park explained, how this ends will affect how every alien species on this ship views humanity. If we rush in to rescue one of our own, they will see us as weak beings who cannot handle individual challenges. But if our cadet can resolve this alone, they will see us as strong individuals who can take care of ourselves. Inside the bathroom, Hana was beginning to feel tired. Controlling multiple ship systems required concentration, and the stress of facing 3 dangerous opponents was wearing her down. But she had managed to keep all 3 Vorthak from getting close enough to grab her. Thekfor had cleared the cleaning solution from his eyes and was looking at her with new respect mixed with his anger. You fight like a coward, he said, using machines instead of your own strength. I fight like a human, Hana replied. We use our brains. Brains will not save you when this room runs out of tricks to play. He was right, and Hana knew it. She had used most of the bathroom's systems, and she could not keep them all running forever. The ship's computer would eventually override her commands to prevent damage to important equipment. But she had learned something important about herself. In the last few minutes, she was not as helpless as she had always believed. When faced with a real threat, her mind had worked quickly and effectively. She had turned a trap into a battleground where her knowledge gave her advantages. Maybe you are right, she said, to Thekfor. Maybe I cannot keep this up forever, but I have already proven something important. What is that? That your people made a mistake when you decided to pick on the quiet human girl. You thought I would be easy to intimidate because I do not act like a warrior. But humans do not all fight the same way. Some of us are pilots like the Dragon Squadron, and some of us are engineers who can turn any room into a weapon. As if summoned. By her words, new voices could be heard in the corridor outside. Jiwon and the other human engineering students had arrived. Hana, called Jiwon's voice. We are here to help. And we brought tools, added another voice. The 3 Vorthak looked worried for the first time. Fighting one small human girl had turned out to be much harder than expected. Fighting multiple humans who understood the ship's systems could be impossible. This is not over, Thekfor warned. Yes, it is, Hana said firmly. She activated the bathroom's communication system and spoke clearly into the microphone. This is Cadet Lee Hana requesting assistance from ship security. 3 Vorthak cadets attacked me in maintenance bathroom 7 Gamma. I have defended myself using available systems, but I need official help to resolve this situation properly. Her message was broadcast throughout the ship's communication network. Every cadet, instructor, and officer aboard the Academy ship now knew exactly what had happened and who was responsible. The confrontation was about to become very public, and the 3 Vorthak bullies realized they had made a terrible mistake. Within minutes of Hana's broadcast, the quiet maintenance section became very busy. Security officers from multiple species began arriving, followed by Academy instructors and curious cadets who had heard the announcement. Ship security was led by Captain Zenth, a professional Asthari officer whose blue skin and 4 arms made her look like a graceful warrior even when she was simply walking. She arrived at the bathroom facility with a mixed team that included officers from several different species. All personnel, step away from the doorway, Captain Zenth announced in her musical voice. This is now an official security matter. Through the bathroom's open door, she could see the chaos that Hana had created. Water still sprayed from several sources, emergency lights flashed, and 3 very wet Vorthak cadets stood awkwardly in the reduced gravity field. "Cadet Lee Hana," Captain Zenth called out, "please deactivate all systems you have modified and exit the facility." "Yes, Captain," Hana replied. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panels, shutting down the water, returning the gravity to normal, and stopping the ventilation fans. The bathroom became quiet except for the dripping of water. As Hana walked out, Captain Zenth studied her carefully. The human girl was wet and looked tired, but she was not injured. Her eyes showed determination rather than fear. "The 3 Vorthak cadets will also exit immediately," Captain Zenth ordered. Thekvor and his 2 companions stumbled out of the bathroom. They looked embarrassed and angry, their scales dripping with water and cleaning solution. Other cadets in the corridor stared at them with surprise and amusement. Commander Park and his 2 pilots watched from a position near the back of the growing crowd. Park felt proud of what the human cadet had accomplished, but he also knew this situation could still become much more serious. "Captain," Thekvor said, his voice full of indignation, "this human attacked us with ship systems. She could have caused serious damage to the Academy." "Is that your official statement?" Captain Zenth asked, taking notes on a digital tablet. "Yes. We were simply talking to her when she began using maintenance controls as weapons." Captain Zenth looked at Hana. "Cadet Lee, what is your version of these events?" Hana took a deep breath. She knew that what she said next would be very important, not just for her, but for all the human cadets on the ship. "Captain, I was doing authorized engineering work when these 3 cadets cornered me and forced me into the bathroom. They demanded that I admit humans are inferior and do not belong in the Academy. When I refused, they threatened me with physical violence. I used my knowledge of ship systems to defend myself until help could arrive." "She lies," snarled the 2nd Vorthak. "Humans always lie when they are caught doing wrong." "Actually," said a new voice from the crowd, "she is telling the truth." Everyone turned to see Professor Kim pushing through the group of observers. The human engineering instructor held a data tablet that showed system readings from the past hour. "I have been monitoring the power usage for Cadet Hana's project," Professor Kim explained. "The readings show normal data collection activity until approximately 30 minutes ago. At that time, there was a sudden spike in multiple system activations, all concentrated in this bathroom facility." He showed his tablet to Captain Zenth. "The pattern suggests someone was using available systems defensively, not offensively. If she had wanted to cause damage, the power usage would look completely different. More humans protecting their own," Thekvor said with disgust. "No," came another voice. This time it was an unexpected speaker. Kathara, a senior Asthari cadet known for her fairness and intelligence, stepped forward from the crowd. "I was in the observation lounge when the security alerts began," she said in her musical voice. "I accessed the public security recordings to understand what was happening." She held up her own tablet, which showed video footage from the bathroom security camera. The recording clearly shows 3 Vorthak cadets forcing 1 human cadet into the bathroom facility against her will. It shows them making threatening gestures and blocking her exit. It also shows the human cadet defending herself using only non-lethal systems available in the room. The crowd of observers began murmuring in different languages. Cadets from multiple species were watching this confrontation with great interest. "Furthermore," Kathara continued, "the recording shows impressive tactical thinking and system knowledge. This human cadet turned a disadvantageous situation into one where she maintained control through superior understanding of available resources. She cheated," Thekvor insisted. "Real warriors do not hide behind machines. Real warriors use every advantage available to them," said a deep voice from the back of the crowd. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. Through the crowd of cadets came General Torhen, the Vorthak military instructor who taught advanced combat tactics. He was older than the cadet bullies, with darker scales and scars that showed a lifetime of battles. "General," Thekvor said, with surprise, "you understand that humans are trying to avoid honest combat. I understand that you failed to defeat one small opponent despite overwhelming advantages in size and numbers, General Torhen replied coldly. I also understand that your opponent showed tactical awareness, resource management, and psychological warfare skills that impressed even enemy observers. He looked directly at Thekfor with obvious disappointment. You have brought shame to our species by attacking a lone opponent and then losing to her despite your advantages. But General, she is just a weak human. Weak, General Torhen repeated. She neutralized 3 trained Vorthak warriors using only the tools available in a small room. She maintained defensive control for over 20 minutes against superior physical opponents. She called for help when appropriate rather than allowing the situation to escalate beyond her ability to manage. The general turned to address the entire crowd of watching cadets. This human cadet demonstrated exactly the kind of thinking that wins real battles. She assessed her resources, identified her opponent's weaknesses, and executed a plan that kept her safe while placing her enemies at a disadvantage. These are the skills of a true warrior regardless of species. Thekfor and his 2 companions looked stunned. They had expected other Vorthak to support them, but instead their own military instructor was praising their human opponent. Captain Zenth finished taking notes and addressed both groups. Based on the evidence provided, including security recordings and system logs, I am making the following determinations. The 3 Vorthak cadets will face disciplinary action for unauthorized harassment of another student and for creating a dangerous situation. The human cadet acted within Academy self-defense guidelines and will face no punishment. This is unfair, protested the 2nd Vorthak. This is justice, Captain Zenth replied firmly. The Academy exists to train future leaders for all member species of the Galactic Federation. Harassment and intimidation have no place in that mission. As the security officers began processing the 3 Vorthak bullies, the crowd of watching cadets started to break up. But many of them looked at Hana with new interest and respect. Commander Park approached her as the crowd thinned. Cadet Lee, he said formally. That was impressive tactical thinking under pressure. Hana felt her face turn red with embarrassment. Thank you, Commander. I was just trying not to get hurt. You did much more than that. You proved that humans can handle threats intelligently and effectively. That kind of demonstration is worth more than a dozen training exercises. I was scared the whole time. Good warriors are always scared. Park smiled. The difference is that they think clearly despite being scared. As Commander Park walked away, Jiwan and the other human engineering students surrounded Hana. That was amazing, Jiwan said excitedly. I had no idea you knew so much about ship systems. I had no idea either, Hana admitted. I just started thinking about the bathroom like a big engineering problem. You turned yourself into a 1-person army, laughed another student. Those Vorthak had no idea what hit them. But the most interesting reactions came from alien cadets Hana had never spoken with before. Several Kalani students approached with their characteristic bouncing energy. Excuse us, said their leader, a furry yellow female named Pip Ara. We wanted to say that what you did was very clever. Our species also believes in using intelligence rather than brute force, Hank Johanna said quietly. Would you be interested in studying together sometime? We have some system analysis projects that could benefit from your approach to problem solving. For the first time in her life, Hana found herself being invited to join study groups by students from other species. The shy girl who had always tried to stay invisible was suddenly visible in a completely new way. As the maintenance section finally returned to quiet, Hana realized that everything had changed. She was no longer just the quiet human girl who tried not to bother anyone. She had proven that she could think quickly, act decisively, and defend herself when necessary. But more importantly, she had shown other species that humans could not be easily intimidated or dismissed. Word of her success would spread throughout the academy, and every human cadet would benefit from the respect she had earned. The bullies had wanted to humiliate one human to make all humans look weak. Instead, they had given one human the opportunity to make all humans look stronger. The news of Hana's successful defense spread through the academy ship faster than anyone expected. By evening mealtime, cadets from every species were talking about the small human engineer who had defeated 3 Vorthak bullies using only bathroom equipment. In the dining hall, Hana noticed that other students were looking at her differently. Instead of ignoring her or avoiding her table, many cadets nodded respectfully when they passed by. Some even stopped to congratulate her or ask questions about engineering techniques. "I still cannot believe you thought of all those systems so quickly," said Ji-won as they ate dinner together. "I was not really thinking," Hana admitted. "I was just trying to survive. My mind started working like when I solved technical problems in class. Maybe that is what made it so effective. You treated the whole situation like an engineering challenge instead of a fight." At the Vorthak table, the mood was much different. Most of the reptilian cadets sat in uncomfortable silence. The 3 bullies had been confined to quarters pending disciplinary hearings, but their actions had embarrassed the entire Vorthak student population. General Torhen sat with the Vorthak cadets, addressing their concerns directly. "You feel shame because members of your species lost to a single human," he said in his deep voice. "But there is no shame in losing to a superior tactical mind. There is only shame in underestimating opponents and fighting without honor." "But she is so small," one young Vorthak protested. "How can such a tiny creature be dangerous?" "Size is only one measure of capability," the general replied. "This human demonstrated intelligence, resourcefulness, and mental toughness under extreme pressure. These qualities make any warrior dangerous regardless of physical size." At another table, a group of Asthari cadets were having their own discussion about the incident. "The recordings show remarkable spatial awareness and systems integration," observed one blue-skinned student. She understood the room's capabilities better than beings who have lived on this ship for years. "It suggests that human education emphasizes practical application over theoretical knowledge," added another. "Their approach to engineering is more hands-on than most species. I heard she is only a first-year student. Imagine what human engineers can do with more experience." But the most important conversation was taking place in the Dragon Squadron Ready Room. Commander Park had called his pilots together for what appeared to be a routine briefing, but his real purpose was to discuss the day's events. "Today's incident shows that human capabilities are being re-evaluated throughout the Academy," Park began. "Other species are beginning to understand that we have strengths they did not previously recognize. The engineering approach was brilliant," said Lee Soman. She turned defensive positioning into offensive capability using available resources. That kind of tactical flexibility could be very useful in real combat situations. It also showed that individual humans can handle serious threats without immediately calling for help from the group, added Kim Minho. "That suggests independence and self-reliance." Commander Park nodded. "All of these observations will influence how other species interact with humans in the future. But there is something else we need to consider." He activated a holographic display showing star charts of the frontier regions. "I received new orders this morning. The Dragon Squadron is being deployed to the Kepler Frontier Zone. Intelligence reports suggest that several non-Federation species are planning coordinated attacks on human colonies." The pilot studied these star charts with professional interest. The Kepler zone was far from Federation core worlds where human settlements were expanding rapidly. "What kind of opposition are we expecting?" asked Choi Dae-ho. "Unknown at this time. The attacks have been hit-and-run raids using ships and tactics we have not seen before. Our mission is reconnaissance and rapid response." "When do we deploy?" asked Nam Hyuk. "Tomorrow at 800 hours. This will be our first extended mission away from the Academy." Park looked at each of his pilots seriously. "This deployment comes at an interesting time. Today's incident has shown that humans can defend ourselves effectively even when we appear to be in disadvantageous positions. Our mission will be to demonstrate the same principle on a larger scale." "Sir, are you suggesting that today's bathroom fight and our combat mission are related?" asked Samin. "I am suggesting that both situations involve humans proving their capabilities to those who underestimate us. Cadet Lee showed that individual humans cannot be easily intimidated. We will show that human military forces cannot be easily defeated." The next morning brought unusual activity throughout the Academy ship. Word had spread that the Dragon Squadron was deploying on a real mission, and cadets from many species came to the hangar bay to watch the launch preparations. Hana was among the observers, standing with Jiwon and several other human students. She watched as the 5 pilots conducted their pre-flight checks and loaded their fighters with real weapons instead of training equipment. Commander Park noticed her in the crowd and walked over. "Cadet Lee, I wanted to thank you before we deploy," he said formally. "Thank me, sir?" Hana asked with confusion. "Your actions yesterday reminded everyone on this ship that humans are not victims waiting to be rescued. We are people who solve problems and defend ourselves. That message will help my squadron during our mission." "I do not understand how my small problem could affect your mission, Commander." Park smiled. "Because now when we face unknown enemies, in the frontier they will not expect humans to be clever, resourceful, and determined. They will expect us to be weak and easy to defeat. That mistake will give us tactical advantages." He looked toward his waiting fighters. "Every species in this hangar is watching us leave. Some of them used to think humans were not ready for real combat missions. After yesterday, they are not so sure. I hope you all come back safely," Hana said quietly. "We will, and when we do, I suspect we will find that the Academy's view of human potential has changed significantly." As the Dragon Squadron pilots prepared to launch, an unexpected announcement came over the ship's communication system. "Attention all cadets. This is Captain Zenth speaking. The events of yesterday have raised important questions about interspecies relations and conflict resolution aboard this academy. Therefore, today's Dragon Squadron deployment will be broadcast live to all sections of the ship as an educational demonstration." Large viewing screens descended from the hangar ceiling, showing different angles of the launch preparations. Cadets from all 12 species gathered around the screens with great interest. Furthermore, Captain Zenth continued, "Cadet Lee Hana has been invited to provide technical commentary during the launch sequence, as her engineering expertise may help other students understand the systems involved." Hana felt her face turn red with embarrassment. "I cannot speak in front of everyone," she whispered to Jiwon. "Yesterday you fought 3 Vorthak warriors," Jiwon replied. "Talking to students should be much easier." A communications technician approached with a wireless microphone. "Cadet Lee, you will be commenting from the observation deck. Just explain what you see in simple terms." As Hana reluctantly took the microphone, she realized that the Academy was deliberately connecting her engineering demonstration with the Dragon Squadron's military mission. Both represented different aspects of human capability that the school wanted other species to recognize. On the observation deck, she found herself standing next to instructors from several different species. Professor Kim gave her an encouraging nod. "Just talk about the technical aspects you find interesting," he suggested. "You know more about these systems than most of the cadets watching." The 5 Dragon fighters moved into launch position. Their sleek black hulls gleamed under the hangar lights, and the golden dragons painted on their sides seemed to glow with inner fire. Attention all students," Hana said nervously into the microphone. "The Dragon fighters use a hybrid propulsion system that combines chemical rockets for atmosphere work with ion drives for space maneuvering." Her voice carried throughout the ship, and she could see cadets on the screens listening carefully. "The interesting thing about their design is how the power distribution system can shift energy between weapons, shields, and engines, depending on tactical requirements," she continued, her voice becoming steadier as she focused on the technical details. Commander Park's voice came through the hangar speakers. "Dragon Squadron, final systems check complete. Prepare for launch sequence." The launch sequence is particularly complex, Hana explained, because the fighters must transition from the ship's artificial gravity to zero gravity, then immediately accelerate to combat speeds. On the screens, the 5 fighters lifted smoothly from the hangar floor. Their movements looked like a carefully choreographed dance. "Notice how they maintain formation even during launch," Hana said. "That requires constant communication between their navigation computers and incredible pilot skill." "Dragon Squadron, you are clear for space operations," came the launch controller's voice. The fighters shot out of the hangar and into the starfield beyond. On the screens, viewers could see them forming up in their characteristic attack formation. "Now they are switching from atmospheric flight mode to space combat configuration," Hana explained. "Watch how their wing positions change and their weapon systems deploy. 3 days after the Dragon Squadron's departure, life aboard the Academy ship had settled into a new rhythm. The incident in the bathroom and Hana's technical presentation had created changes that rippled through every section of the massive vessel. Hana found herself invited to study groups with students from 6 different species. Her engineering expertise was suddenly in high demand, not because she was human, but because she was good at solving problems that others found difficult. The power coupling equations are much clearer when you explain them, said Pipara, the Kalani student who had first approached Hana after the bathroom incident. Human teaching methods are very practical. I just try to think about how the systems actually work instead of just memorizing formulas, Hana replied. They were sitting in a study room with 2 Astari cadets and a young granite whose rock-like features showed concentration. That is exactly what makes your approach valuable, added Kithara, who had become a regular member of their study group. Most species learn engineering through theoretical frameworks. Humans seem to learn by understanding the physical reality first. The mixed species study group had become so popular that Professor Kim had officially recognized it as an advanced engineering seminar. Students from across the academy were requesting permission to join. But the real test of how much had changed came during the morning meal on the 4th day. Hana was walking through the dining hall when she noticed a familiar figure sitting alone at a corner table. It was Thekvor, the Vorthak bully who had started the bathroom confrontation. He had been released from confinement after his disciplinary hearing, but he looked different now. His usually aggressive posture seemed deflated and his yellow eyes stared at his food without their former arrogance. Hana hesitated for a moment, then made a decision that surprised even herself. She walked over to his table. "May I sit down?" she asked politely. Thekvor looked up with surprise. "Why would you want to sit with me? I tried to hurt you." "Because you look like you need someone to talk to," Hana said, sitting across from him. "And because I think we might have things to discuss." "The other Vorthak will not speak to me," Thekvor said bitterly. "They say I brought shame to our species by losing to a human." "Is that what you think happened? That you lost to me?" Thekvor considered this question carefully. "I think I lost to myself. I believed things about humans that were not true. I let prejudice make me stupid." "What do you believe now?" "I believe that I understand very little about other species. General Torhen has been teaching me about the history of warfare, and he says that the greatest warriors are those who learn from their defeats." Hana nodded. "My grandfather used to say that mistakes are only failures if you do not learn from them." "Your grandfather was wise. What else did he teach you?" "That strength comes in many different forms. Physical strength, mental strength, emotional strength, and the strength to admit when you are wrong." Thekvor looked directly at her for the first time since she had sat down. "I was wrong about humans. I was wrong about you. And I am sorry for what I tried to do." "Apology accepted," Hana said simply. "But the real question is what you do next." "What do you mean?" "You can spend the rest of your time at the academy feeling sorry for yourself, or you can use this experience to become better than you were before." Before Thekvor could respond, they were interrupted by the arrival of Hana's study group. Jiwon, Kithara, Pipara, and the others approached the table with curious expressions. "Hana," Jiwon said carefully. "Are you all right?" "I am fine. Thekvor and I are just having a conversation about learning from mistakes." The Vorthak looked uncomfortable surrounded by so many students from different species, but he did not leave. "Actually," he said slowly, "I wanted to ask you something, Cadet Lee. Would it be possible for me to join your engineering study group?" The other students looked surprised. A Vorthak asking to study with humans and their allies was almost unheard of. "Engineering is not typically a Vorthak interest," observed Kethera diplomatically. "No, it is not," Thekvor agreed. "We usually focus on direct combat training, but I have realized that I do not understand how most of the technology around me actually works. That ignorance made me vulnerable to someone who did understand it." Hana looked around the table at her study partners. "What does everyone else think?" If he is serious about learning, he should be welcome, said the granite student in his slow, deep voice. Knowledge should not be restricted by species. Agreed, said Pipara. Our study group works because we bring different perspectives together. A Vorthak perspective could be valuable. Then it is settled, Hana said. You can join us, Thek4, but you will need to work hard to catch up with the material we have already covered. I will work harder than I have ever worked before, the Vorthak promised. As the study group began discussing their afternoon session, they were interrupted by an announcement over the ship's communication system. Attention all cadets and faculty. This is Captain Zenth speaking. We have received a priority communication from the Dragon Squadron. The transmission will be broadcast academy-wide in the main assembly hall in 10 minutes. The dining hall immediately buzzed with excitement and concern. Real military communications were rarely shared with cadets unless something significant had happened. Hana and her study group joined the stream of students heading toward the assembly hall. The large space could hold the entire academy population, with seating areas designed for the different physical requirements of 12 species. Captain Zenth took the podium as the last students found their seats. The Dragon Squadron has completed their reconnaissance mission in the Kepler Frontier Zone. Commander Park will now report their findings. The main screen activated, showing the familiar interior of a Dragon fighter's cockpit. Commander Park appeared in his flight suit, looking tired but determined. Academy Control, this is Dragon Leader reporting mission status. We have successfully completed reconnaissance of the Kepler Zone and engaged hostile forces attempting to attack human civilian colonies. A murmur of excitement ran through the assembled students. This was the first news of actual combat involving Academy graduates. Our findings confirm that non-Federation species have been conducting coordinated raids on human settlements using advanced stealth technology. We engaged a force of 12 enemy fighters with our squadron of 5. 12 against 5, whispered Jiwon. Those are terrible odds. The enemy expected to face standard Federation fighter tactics, Park continued. However, we employed adaptive strategies based on human engineering principles and tactical flexibility. On the screen, tactical displays showed the battle formations and engagement sequences. The 5 Dragon fighters had used hit-and-run attacks, environmental advantages, and coordinated system modifications to defeat a larger enemy force. Final result: all 12 enemy fighters destroyed or disabled with no Dragon Squadron casualties. We also rescued over 300 human civilians from 2 colony worlds and provided humanitarian aid to mixed species settlements that had been damaged by the raids. The assembly hall erupted in cheers from cadets of all species. Even traditionally reserved species like the granite showed obvious approval. Furthermore, Commander Park added, our success has led to formal requests from 4 non-Federation species for diplomatic contact. They wish to discuss peaceful coexistence rather than continue military confrontation. Captain Zenth took the microphone again. The Dragon Squadron's mission demonstrates the combat effectiveness of human military forces and the diplomatic potential of showing strength through successful defense rather than aggression. She looked out over the assembled students. This success was built on the same principles demonstrated here at the Academy 4 days ago. Human capabilities should not be underestimated, whether in individual confrontations or large-scale military operations. Hana realized that Captain Zenth was deliberately connecting the bathroom incident with the Dragon Squadron's victory. Both had involved humans using intelligence and resourcefulness to overcome seemingly superior opposition. As the assembly concluded and students began filing out, many alien cadets approached human students with new interest and respect. Your pilots fight like engineers, observed a senior Asthari cadet to a group of human military trainees. They modify their tactics and equipment during battle to match changing conditions. That flexibility is probably why they won, replied one of the humans. Our instructors always taught us to adapt to circumstances rather than follow rigid procedures. General Torhen approached Hana as she left the assembly hall. Cadet Lee, I wanted to speak with you. Yes, General. Your actions 4 days ago have had consequences beyond what you might realize. The Dragon Squadron's victory was built on the same tactical thinking you demonstrated in that bathroom. You proved that humans can turn disadvantageous situations into victories through superior understanding and creative application of available resources. I was just trying to survive, General. Exactly. And that survival instinct, combined with intelligence and determination, is what makes humans formidable opponents and valuable allies. He gestured toward the departing students. Notice how many alien cadets are now seeking to study with humans, work with humans, and learn from human methods.